Good morning and welcome to Fat Cow Farm. Now, I was down the street the other day and I was at a second-hand bookstore. Anyway, I came across this little journal about keylines from PA Yeoman. And anyway, it was only a couple of bucks, so I bought it. And it's been sitting on the coffee table, so I've been reading through it as we go through towards the evenings. Now, what I found interesting was, this guy was putting stuff together as a part of soil management and regeneration back in the 20s. And I thought, look, I'll have to give it a go. Like, it's just something else that I just went, wow, cop that. And so, this fella's designed plows and everything else to coincide with his keyline theories. Now, a lot of people, and I've sort of then looked on the internet and had a look about what's going on, and everybody sort of swears about it. And I'm like, okay, I'll give it a go. Now, what I thought I would do is that you can see this paddock behind me. This is one of the steeper ones that we have. And I thought, well, I'll give it a crack. And what I'm going to do is put in 4 keyline. You can almost call them swales, I suppose, at the end of the day, but then they're just purely just a single cut into the ground, so that the moisture coming off the ground, or the rain coming off the ground, into the little cuts on contour, like so. And you can see my blue marks, though I've already sort of come through this morning and sort of got a few things squared away, and I'll show you how easy that is to do. But anyway, going back, and so really where you've got gradient on your land, what they're saying is that this will really work. So what I've done is I've come through and I've got 4 contour lines that I've picked up. You can't see them because it's all very similar to this. And what I'm going to do is just use my pipe layer at the back of the tractor and follow this through. Now, the idea being is that this is the steepest grade, and so this is where most of the runoff would be. And what they're saying in their book is that, what PA Yeoman is saying in their book is that the force of the water coming through is then picking up all the soils and things like that, which we already knew as a part of our swales and slowing down water and all that sort of stuff. But what we're finding is that we can start hydrating in smaller sections, which that is probably what appealed to me the most. Now, over summer, this top section up through here does get very dry. Now, since we've been introducing rotational grazing and things like that, and having the chance for these paddocks to come back to life before bringing the cows back in, I'm still finding that I've got some dry sections, and that's really what I really want to try and eliminate. So what's happening at the moment is that from this top section here, and you can see just beyond the sheep down here, you can see the swale that we had cut in. Now, what I'm finding is that I've got no moisture or moisture absorbent coming back into the ground on heavier rain. Now, and that's what we've been having over this, I suppose, in the last couple of years. We don't get that fine mist, and if we do, it's a little bit of a godsend. But we are finding that we are getting a lot heavier rain. And what's happening is that this is running through, stopping at the swale. The swales are filling up, and at the moment the swales are still running, I don't know, around about 4 to 5 days before that captured rainwater absorbs back into the ground. And I thought, well, okay, that's pretty much telling me that I've got a very well hydrated soil at that end of the farm around that swale, but here I don't. And I thought to myself, well, this is something that we could do, because they are like mini swales. And the idea being is that you're taking it from a low point, let's say a slight valley in the contour of the ground or of the paddock, and then you're slowly running it back to the ridge on a slight grade. So instead of having on contour here for your swales, we've just got it on a slight grade going back to the higher part of the ridge, but following on contour. And they're the ones that's the areas that I've got dry over summer. So I thought, well, you know, it's almost like water running backwards, if that makes sort of sense, but you're following the contour and with a slight grade, so you've got that flow running through. And in saying that, then you can see how the curves are sort of doing their thing, and that's just following contour, and I'll show you how we've got that set up. But I can push water that way, and I can push water that way on a slight little grade, and that's what I'm interested in. So anyway, I've got my staff here. I'm going to show you the my laser level and how we're doing it, because I've got another section on the other side of this little track that I didn't want to cut through. So I'm going to continue this line on the other side of that track, which goes to the header tank, and I'll show you how easy it is. And then tomorrow what I'll do is I'll get the tractor out and I'll put the pipe layer on. And I still haven't worked out exactly how deep I'm going to go, so I'm still working through that. And I'm imagining probably around about maybe 300, 350 mil, because then the water can come into that cut, slowly fill, and then follow its own grade back to the ridges that I want to start hydrating. All right, so I'll go get the laser. I'll come and find you, and I'll see you soon. All right, so I've set up my laser, and that's sitting there on that tripod. And what I want to do is just find contour at the moment. So on my existing line, and that's what I really want to start moving forward to the other side of this little track. So when I put my staff down, all right, so I've got that solid beat, and that's what I'm chasing, and that gives me my line running through. So that gives me contour running through this paddock. So I've got my trusty paint, so I'm just going to come on the other side of this track, and I want to start working on this side. All right, so that's my first line. And all I'm going to do is just slowly follow this around. And take myself over to that fence on the other side, because around about 50 meters up I've got another line here that I want to sort of work towards. So you can see that what's going to happen is there's a fairly gentle, or quite a little slope running through here, and I'm just going to be hugging that line coming around. So the line's going to be curvy and all that sort of all around that little hill there. So we're going to capture the water here coming down into this little cut, and that's what I'm interested in. So then I can start slowing up that water and pushing it to a little bit of a high spot, which is sort of around here. So I'm going to push it back into this little area. So I'll then change the grade a little bit from contour, running a little bit lower, a little bit lower, a little bit lower to this area here, because this is where I've got the track on my sort of main ridge coming back up this side. And that's what I really want to start hydrating. So look, and again, like I said, you know, like a lot of people are swearing by this, and there are so many different systems out there that I thought, well, I'll give it a crack. You know, what's there to really lose at this sort of situation? So I'm going to finish off this running over to that fence line, and that'll give me my 4. I've finished everything else, and then I'll get the like I said, the pipe layer out, I don't want to go through the expense of a yeoman's plough at this particular point in time. I just want to see how this is actually going to work. And if I can see that, you know, we're still in the middle of winter, and as we're coming into spring and summer, and I've got photos of this area still logged into our little farm log that we're running here. And if I can see a difference, and I don't know if we're going to see it in 6 months before summer starts, or 4 months before summer starts, but it might be a good indication of what we've got. And are we going to be keeping that grass momentum growth happening? And if we can, well then, I tell you what, it might be then worth the investment for a proper designated yeoman's plough for some of the other areas that I have here, where I am a little bit dry over that summer period. So let's see let's really see what happens at the end of the day. So let me get back to it. I'll make my gradient or make my contour over to this fence. I'll come and find you, and I'll see you soon. All right then, so it's been a busy morning today, and as you can see, or you've seen on the video there, I've already done 3 of our Yeoman Keyline swales, I suppose you can call it, or Keyline ditches, or I can't quite remember what he actually called it. But effectively what I've done is come through on our painted line, on our contour here, and with my pipe layer, and opened up everything. So what I've measured this now, that's sitting at around about 450 mil below grass level. Now what's happened is, and I didn't sort of expect this, is that as the pipe layers come through, it's opening up both sides, and you can see that quite evidently up on the top ridge there. But then, later on I was thinking to myself, it's probably not a bad thing. So what's happening, or what will end up happening, is that you'll get moisture runoff come through and hold up, and it will then slowly seep into that, that 450 mil ditch. Now, soil's gone back on top of it and everything else, so it's going to be quite soft in that run there. So, effectively as a whole, I've only got, maybe 200 or about 200 mil. Then it's all loose soil thereafter. And as that rainfall or the water comes off the hill here and holds up, it'll seep back in, hold up, and then start transferring back subterraneously. And I thought, that's okay, that's okay. And then I thought to myself, what could I put on the other side to aid in extra nutrients and things like that coming into that soil? And last night I was cleaning out the goat pen, and I thought, my God, I have to do this, every couple of weeks. There's straw, there's all the goat urine, there's all the goat poo and stuff like that. So what I'm going to start doing, and I've brought my the little all-terrain trailer up here with me, is I'm going to start up the top. So on the far side, or the upside of our Keyline trench here, I'm just going to start laying in all the muck coming from the goats. So there's straw and urine and all that stuff that I was telling you about. As a nutrient base, it's all going to break down into these ditches, or into this cut, and then start transferring through. Now, I don't know how long that's going to take, but in theory that sounds pretty good to me. So we're roughly about 50 meters in between each of our keyline cuts here. So I'm thinking that if we do the top one to start with, I don't know how much, we might only get a quarter of it done, but because we're doing it so regularly, cleaning out the goat muck, that I'll just keep on adding to it all the way down. And it's, we put it all around our trees and things like that, but we're now got to that point where the season is now swung. All right, so we've already done our winter mulching around all our fruit trees and things like that. So the next one won't be until spring, as we sort of tend to mulch on every season. So in between, I'm going to start putting it on these keyline cuts. So what I'll do is we'll go up to the top, and I'll meet you up there, and I'll start shoveling this stuff out, and we'll just have to see how it all pans out. But you know, it's been an interesting sort of process. You know, I can see how this is all going to happen. I can see how the water is all going to get held up. I can see that the bacteria, and if we're adding in that sort of fertilizer material on the high side, that has to come into these cuts and start transferring through those soils. And I'm hoping that that just gives all that grass and everything such a big vigor that this will end up being from the worst paddock to the best paddock, you know. And again, you know, we were talking about it last night, and what we might do is actually run our biochar. And this is probably the best way for us to get our biochar into our paddocks. So that's not quite ready yet, but as we start developing, and I think that's more of a now that the comfrey has dropped off over winter, that's certainly a summer sort of scenario, is that we make with our biochar, put it on the high side, or actually in on top of these cuts. But as a part of restoring your paddocks, I think that might be the go. All right, so let me get the all-terrain trailer and buggy. I'm going to head up to the top cut, and we can go from there. So I'll see you soon. All right, so here we are on one of those keyline cuts. Now, this is what I was explaining before about how the pipe layer has sort of opened everything up. Now, you can see this is all just super loose. And that's, you know, around about that 450. But what's actually exposed is, as a part of a hole, is only about 200. So that all sort of sat like that. And what I'm thinking is that what's going to happen is we're going to have that sheeting water come through over the top. And this is almost going to be like a dam, or a dam wall, where it's just going to stop and then seep in. You know, so I'm thinking that this is where we lay all that goat muck and everything else. But as you can, you know, see further down the paddock now, that it's all the same. So, you know, it's a good place for us to start working out where we're going to put some of our animal waste now. And I reckon this is probably the best place to start. So I'm going to get I've got my trailer here. I'm going to get all that squared away, and I'll come and find you, and I'll see you soon. All right, so as you can see, all I'm doing is just grabbing, got my trusty compost fork here, and just sort of putting it on the high side. You can see that's the hole. And what I'm hoping is that this, as the water just sits here and soaks up, and all that poo will break down, the urine, this will be a mulch bed, pretty much. And, you know, we'll get to the end, and then we'll start again. You know, this is only, what have we got here? This is 2 weeks worth. So, you know, every 2 weeks we can come up here and put a little bit of something on these edges. I'm going to try one further over to see what that works out with our biochar, and you know, and pour that into the soils or whatever it may be. But you know, like everything here at Fat Cow Farm, you know, it's I'm reading all these things, and I suppose once that rabbit hole has been open, you know, it's a big dark tunnel, and trying to work out what works for you, I suppose, is really the key. You know, and then there was another article that we were looking at about Peter Andrews, about his natural sequence farming, and doing something similar to this, but then bringing up soil from the, you know, from a silt pocket or something like that, and bringing it up. And you know, that's almost 1,000 years in the whole cycle of you know, animals grazing at the bottom and at night leaving them up at the top of the hill. And, you know, we don't have time for that and we're too small. But, you know, I'm thinking that we've got a byproduct that we need to do something with. This just makes sense to me. So, you know, let's talk in a year and see really what happens. Like, we're in the middle of winter. You wouldn't know it today. It's absolutely fantastic, but cool. And I'm hoping that, you know, this all actually starts working, and, you know, even by, I don't know, you know, come winter, we can certainly see a patch of really high density green grass here and then nothing. And if that's the case, well, you know, that's just a time process, or in turn, we put another keyline through, you know, and I don't know. I haven't seen results about how this is all going to work, so there you go. Look, I've got to empty this trailer. I'll get this squared away. We're not nearly going to have enough to do what we need to do, but it's a start. And this is the worst section through here. So I thought this is where we would start, and we can go on. So, all about keyline cuts into your soil and being really crazy and turning around and putting a manure bed behind it. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon.